Well, well, well. It's the Final Four. What do we have here? Man, we got Cavs of Destiny and Leaguemates in the first matchup. Leaguemates, a team of favor all season, almost as if nothing could go wrong for Casey and his squad. Unfortunately, he has had several things break against his team, all seemingly at once.
All right, it is Thursday at 2 p.m. Checking in. I haven't done one of these in a while because I actually have not played a competitive game. I've had the 1 seed locked up for I think 4 or 5 weeks now, but a lot has changed since then. Short story, I'm fucked. So if you want to stop there, Tony, and you just want to include that, that's fine. But long story is, I'm getting fucked, but there is a way to persevere.
The wave of destruction. You got Kirk Cousins getting benched for Michael Penix. You got what I called as a potential and what I was fearful of with Jameis Winston was in a meaningful time. They were going to pivot away from him into giving the keys to DTR in a lost season.
Casey's just had too many bad things happen to him. Kirk Cousins got benched. Jameis Winston got benched.
Within the week, I lost Kirk Cousins to a benching, Jameis Winston to a benching, and David Montgomery to a season-ending injury. That is obviously extremely tough to the team, as I did have pretty good health luck the entire year.
I mean, Jameis Winston has honestly he lost himself the job finally. Jameis Winston is a fun experience, but one that nobody wants to really hitch their ride to.
So a couple things I need. I picked up Kendre and I picked up Tajay. I need either Tony Pollard or Alvin Kamara to not play because I don't trust any of the backup quarterbacks to put into my lineup. So I'm going with a position player in the superflex position.
Right now he's got Tajay in his OP spot, the superflex option spot, over Mason Rudolph. We'll see. I would be putting probably Mason Rudolph in there, but everybody runs their team their way.
Then secondly, I really need Kenneth Walker to not play because if Walker and Charbonnet both play, they're just going to eat into each other's work. I don't feel comfortable starting both of them against Minnesota. So I need to just be able to start one of them. Doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, I think, is something to really keep a pulse on. If one of those guys plays and we have the backfield is going to be either Kenneth Walker's or Zach Charbonnet's, I think that's going to be a big boost for Casey because, you know, Charbonnet's been really good when filling in for Kenneth Walker, and we already know Kenneth Walker has been really good at spurts and times for fantasy. So if he has no Charbonnet, another big thing for him.
So in reality, what I need is it's going to come down to 3 things. My stars have to start. Justin Jefferson against a just all right Seattle secondary, and then Bijan Robinson against the Giants defense. If those 2 players give me 2 touchdowns, 100 yards, I have a chance. But without that, I literally have no chance because the rest of them are a lot of toss-ups. It could also come down to the Stafford Cup stack, which are playing in MetLife in the cold against this Jets secondary, who's not as good as previous, and Sauce won't be covering Cup, but nonetheless, it's not the greatest matchup.
He does have the Stafford and Cup stack. He has that upside to save him, but he's just banking on too many things. He doesn't have David Montgomery. He's having to start Tajay Spears, who's shown value, especially if Tony Pollard misses, but I don't think he's going to miss. He's still going to be splitting with Pollard.
But I still feel fine about my team. There's a reason I was the 1 seed. Most of the players in my starting lineup have been the reason I got the 1 seed, so I'm going to trust them no matter what. I am a 15-point underdog to JL. When it comes to his team, he's got Lamar and Zay against Pittsburgh. Usually, I think that would be a good thing for me, but Lamar at home against the Steelers as 6.5-point favorites with Bateman, I think, is out injured. I could see Zay getting 10 to 12 targets in this game and Lamar putting on a pretty special performance. So that's not good.
It just feels like a lot of these things are clicking at the right time for JL, right? You got Lamar and Baker. Listen, it's not quite Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, but damn it, it's not far off. Shit, it's not far off. Lamar and Baker have been playing incredible football, and honestly, like for fantasy football, they're neck and neck with those 2 guys.
The other stack I really don't like is Bucky and Baker in Dallas, in the Dome. That game could be like 35-30 against the Cowboys. Bucky gets 2 touchdowns. Baker throws 3 touchdowns. That's the most worrisome.
You have Drake London getting Michael Penix. We'll see what comes there, but Devontae Adams coming off his best game of the season with Aaron Rodgers. You got Zay Flowers in the stack with Lamar. Honestly, Travis Kelce's the one spot here where you're like, I don't know. I mean, and if that's the case, I think tight end in this type of format doesn't really matter all that much. You already got 14.7 from Ladd in this game on Thursday night.
So do I feel great about my matchup? No. Do I think I'm going to win? Yes. Would I have felt way better if I didn't lose potentially 3 starters within the past week? Of course. but this is where we land.
It's ironic that we're now at the point Casey made the proclamation that Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney was going to be a better stack than Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And even though in the first half of the year, it looked like it wasn't the worst take in the world, we're now at a point where Kirk Cousins is getting flat out benched. Darnell Mooney has been on the back of a milk carton for the last month, and I have picked up Michael Penix. You know, Casey was in the office the other day asking me, what are you even doing with Michael Penix? Why are you still making moves? Why would you roster him? It goes back to the middle of the season. When we made a trade, I gave him Matthew Stafford and David Montgomery. He gave me Brian Thomas and Brock Purdy. And the next Sunday after we made that trade, we were all in a house in Austin watching Red Zone, and David Montgomery pulled up with a thigh injury. At the time, it looked kind of rough, and I genuinely felt bad for Casey, even though he was leading our division, even though his team was on a historic run, scoring more fantasy points than I can even fathom. Even with those things in consideration, I still felt bad that Casey just made this trade and one of the players, the main piece of his side of that trade, pulled up with an injury almost immediately. Shit like that has happened to me in the past in fantasy, and it sucks. So I actually felt bad for Casey. But later on that Sunday, David Montgomery returns to the game. He's all fine. It's Brian Thomas who winds up getting injured, and Casey is doing victory laps saying, I fleeced Tony in this trade. I'm so good at trading. Ha ha, look at you with an injured Brian Thomas now. So I'm now going to keep that same energy. And in week 16, in a must-win game, I'm going to say ha-ha to you. I have Michael Penix. Kirk Cousins fucking sucks. Darnell Mooney fucking sucks. And you have to play bum-ass Mason Rudolph.
And by the way, I want it on the record, if there is anyone I want to win this league, it is JL. He is absolutely electric in every recap. He's my favorite person to watch in any of the Idiot Leaguemates content.
Who am I rooting for to win the chip? It has to be JL. Just the nicest guy in the room. Cavs of Destiny gotta have the destiny to win the chip. If there's anyone that would want an extra 5K in their pocket, it probably would be JL.
I'm leaning JL in this first matchup. I think it will still be close. I think Casey still has some things to figure out based on what happens throughout the week, but I'm gonna go ahead and take JL in this one.
JL's team is just getting hot at the right time, and this isn't talked about enough because Jack made this miraculous playoff spot. But remember, JL started the season 0-3. He started defeated. Him and Joe were both 0-3, or like, could be up to these guys to get last place, and now JL is a game away, and I think he will win this game away to send him to the Fantasy Football Yachts. Fantasy Football Championship. I'm a fucking idiot. Hang.
Let's talk about another settle steam. Jack seemingly has caught all the favor that his brother has lost.
Hey, Gut, go fuck yourself.
This team right now is just looking like a fucking problem.
No, I'm kidding. I'm staying humble. I told you guys from the start, out of just pure respect for Gut, best of luck, good luck. In terms of the fantasy matchup, I think obviously the main core here is I have Chase Brown. He's got Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Which way is that going to land?
I'm playing Jack. I don't feel great about it. I think I'm kind of cooked. DTR is playing for the Browns. T is playing, which makes me, again, feel worse. I thought Jamar was like, maybe there's a hope T doesn't play, ton of targets. Looks like T's playing. Should be an easy Cincy dub, which means easy Chase Brown carries. Not what we love to see.
I'm not nervous, actually, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because they're playing the Browns with DTR. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. So even if it's Burrow to Chase for a touchdown, 89 yards, 7 catches, Chase Brown gets a touchdown, maybe 60 yards, like, I don't see this as a 40-point they put him on. They do have to win, so I don't love that, and Burrow's playing out of his mind, so obviously the explosion spot is possible.
Burrow and Chase, that stack has to hit. We've seen that hit crazy amount of times, but I will say in this Browns matchup now, if it was Jameis versus the Cincinnati, team here, it could be electric. Both teams with nothing on the line, just chucking the ball all over the yard. But I think the way that the Browns are going to use and play with DTR is kind of just going to take some of the air out of the football. So it might result in less opportunities for just overall possessions. And I think there's a realistic opportunity where Cincinnati gets ahead early and doesn't have to throw a whole lot late, where they've typically been trailing and having to go into comeback mode.
Joe Burrow and the Bengals, the stack that's got him so far this year, is facing the Cleveland Browns with DTR, who is probably a game script that more favors Jack, where the Bengals are up, they could just run the ball with Chase Brown, who Jack has, and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They just don't need to sling it like they have been. However, I still think they do enough to get it done.
What I want to see is some poetic justice. And what I mean by that is on Gut's team, even though Ramondre Stevenson and Tyrone Tracy are no longer the good running back options that they once were, even if Trey McBride continues on his scoreless streak, even if Garrett Wilson is now taking a back seat to Devontae Adams, none of that shit matters. The only thing that mattered was the stack, the one stack that both the Settlemans were talking shit about for the first half of the year. Even though Terry McLaurin is playing like a stud, even though Chase Brown is acting like a fantasy MVP, even though Jalen Hurts is having a good season, even though I gave him a virtually free Josh Allen and Chuba Hubbard, none of that shit mattered. You know why? Because Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase was too powerful of a stack to overcome. That, in my eyes, is poetic justice and what I want to see.
My biggest thing right now is I said I need to stay humble because you never know how the fantasy gods are going to take care of you. And it happened. The no-hole roster didn't even make it to the next week. Garendo out. My backup, Bateman, in a boot on Thursday.
Isaac Garendo is looking like he is not going to play. So this flex option for him becoming a little bit iffy. Right now he's got Calvin Austin in there. Does he roll with a guy like McNichols? Does he put in Shotty B? Does he go to an option off of the waiver wire? You know, kind of one of those. Does he put in Parker Washington, which I know he's played at a time before?
A little bit nervous. Like, do I have to go to Calvin Austin? Do I make a pickup on Saturday morning when I'm flying from Chicago to Texas to go see the college football playoff game? Like, that's stressing me out.
I'll say this right now, whatever Jack throws in there, it might end up getting 20 points. It may not matter the way his team is catching fire at the moment. Still look at those quarterback options, Hurts and Allen, great super flex options. You got Chase Brown, Chuba Hubbard, which I already talked about. Guys could be top 5 weekly. Terry McLaurin's playing really great football this whole season.
The one thing I know is I've got really good quarterbacks who are going to go and try and win games, so they're going to score fantasy points. And I've got good players on good teams. Versus Gut, who's got the Bengals, obviously, stacked. But after that, Tyrone Tracy, Ramondre Stevenson, like, how many points are these teams scoring?
I don't feel great. DK's been ass. Garrett Wilson's solid. Running backs, I feel like I have really good matchups, and that would be nice. And Drew Lock is back for the Giants, so again, I feel better about Tyrone Tracy. Still don't love it.
The Rhino and Tyrone Tracy at this point in the season, do they give him enough of a boost? Do they give him more than just a little bit of a floor? I think that's going to play a big part of this matchup.
Jack is on a hell of a run right now. He has all the luck on his side. And Gut is dealing with a couple of bad luck things, such as now having to start Bryce Young as his QB2.
There's definitely some things stacked up against Gut. I will say a Jalen Coker, Bryce Young thing in that game versus Atlanta, another really interesting one to pulse.
Arizona versus Carolina also looks like a big Chuba game. Not hot, but I do have Bryce Young and Jalen Cooker on the other side. So if it turns into a passing script, that'll be a dub for me. And if we pass for a touchdown or whatever and it goes to Chuba, I get some points in return, but obviously who knows?
It really comes down to this, and I think this has been the theme of the season. Is Terry McLaurin a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, or is he just played that way? Like, Justin Jefferson, we know what we're getting out of him. Jamar Chase, we know what we're getting out of him. There's no reason to say that we shouldn't know what we're getting out of Terry McLaurin, except for the one thing that's hanging over everyone's head here. He played the Philadelphia Eagles on a short week, and he put up a 0 spot. If he zeroes out, and MHA zeroes out, and Josh Allen doesn't go for 40, am I no longer the favorite?
I'm predicting that Gut's team this week to send him to the Fantasy Football Championship is carried by DK Metcalf versus the Minnesota Vikings. I think we got at least a 20-point game coming from DK.
I think right now it'd be a pretty decent lean where most people probably take Jack. I actually think Gut this week is really going to keep it close, and I think he's going to sneak one out. I could see this one going either way. I think it's going to be a tight game.
I think Jack will win. I want Gut to win because looking at Gut's Week 17 matchups in the potential championship, he has Chase and Burrow, who are essentially his entire team, going against Denver. Chase would be guarded by Surtain, and the Denver defense with Surtain on Chase, I feel like is one of the best matchups you can ask for that deadly Chase and Burrow stack. So I'm rooting for Gut because I feel like I have the best chance of beating Gut if he would get to the finals, but I think there's a small chance, actually, I think there's a higher than 50% chance that we have a Settlement Brothers matchup in the championship.
Look, I don't know who's going to win this weekend. Both games seem like a coin toss, 50-50, could go either way. But the one thing that I will be rooting for is to not see in the very first year of this league, a Settlement Super Bowl.
So right now I'm predicting that Gut plays JL in the finals, and I will say if we get the inverse of the Settlesteins in the championship game, Lord have mercy.
I'm picking the BDGE boys to meet up in the Fantasy Football Championship.
The next 365 days are going to be extremely unbearable if Jack or Casey walk away with the championship this year.
Feel good about the matchup. I'm excited about the matchup. That last flex spot is going to be the death of me. But good luck to Gut.
Best of luck to Jack. We'll see how it comes out, and we'll see if Guttis can escape with a win here.